This is the Criterion Creeps podcast, and tonight we're talking about the Carl Theodor Dreyer Collection, Part 1, as we hit the first two films in the collection this week. The first one, 125 in that collection, Day of Wrath from 1943. The synopsis and tagline here from Letterboxd: a drama of fear and superstition in the 20th century. In a Danish village in the early 1600s, a young woman named Anne, whose mother was thought to be a witch, develops sympathy towards an old woman, Marthe, who is accused of witchcraft. The intervention of Anne's older but kindly husband, Pastor Absalon, saved her mother, but now, urged on by his overbearing mother, he refuses to help Marthe. When Absalon's son returns home and is attracted to Anne, it's a matter of time before her family destiny catches up with her. So, Day of Wrath for me is a rewatch. I happen to own this collection of movies. It came about, why did I buy this? So 10 years ago or so, I was super into Lars von Trier movies, and I was watching, people listening to the podcast and only experience movies via the Criterion Collection will remember he directed the film Element of Crime, one of our least listened to episodes in general, because no one watches that movie, and also not a great Lars von Trier movie on the whole, I'd say.
I believe it is. I believe it is in both of our bottom 5 ranked lists so far out of 130.
It's
in my bottom 5.
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's bottom 5, but it's down there. Anyway, he's made some really good movies, though. I'm telling you, we'll get there one day in the Creeps, and maybe I'll lend you Dogville or something. Anywho, so Lars von Trier, a fellow Dane here with Carl Theodor Dreyer, he holds this guy in high regard. The other aspect of me finding out about this Carl Theodor Dreyer dude is director Paul Schrader. He wrote a book called Transcendental Style in reference to 3 directors. One, Robert Bresson. 2, Carl Dreyer, and the other is old Ozu, Yasujiro Ozu, and like how these 3 directors from around the same period of time, like there's a bit of like they were making movies at the same time, maybe started a little sooner than later than the others, and how they kind of both all 3 of the directors deal with kind of like humanity and like personal people, like the personalities of people and their interactions with others in similar ways, like while making completely different movies, but like they're kind of these like serious-minded dramatists who are very interested in humanity in general. So that was kind of before I got to, Ozu, there was always something that like kind of I wasn't super interested in at the time, but now I'm like, I think actually he's maybe like one of the best directors ever. Bresson was one of those guys too who've like, I don't know, I've watched like 8 of his movies, and like 2 or 3 of them are like all-time bangers. And then there's Dreyer here, who has directed that movie, Passion of Joan of Arc, which I think both you and I probably would have as our like best movie in the Criterion Collection thus far. Number 1, right? Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, that all being said, so this was like, I guess for you, the first time you're watching more Dreyer movies, because you haven't watched Vampire yet or anything like that. Master of the House. I haven't
watched any, just the one.
Okay. So I mean, this movie's made like what, 15 years after Passion of Joan of Arc, so it's like a big jump in a director's life, I guess, in terms of like youthfulness and like excitement and like approaching movies, because this movie far more resembles a drama. Like it's like very, it's like there's like a lot you can talk about with like Passion of Joan of Arc. It's like the fact that it's like all close-ups and the way it's made. It's kind of like this top form of like silent cinema in a lot of ways. Day of Wrath feels like a movie, like it's just like a presentation of things. It's very stage-like, play-like, and the fact that it's also based on a play, that makes sense. So this movie came out during World War II, which is kind of something that links into this one plot element in the movie. There's a bunch of stuff in this movie for subject matter wise, like that kind of warms it to my heart. Witch hunts, 15th century Europe, European filmmaking, melodrama, and just kind of the general depiction of like patriarchal abuse, and just like how shitty it is to be a woman, then, now, and forever. Yeah, so I mean, the movie's very simple. In fact, it's like very front loaded as we get like in the first half hour, a woman on the run after being accused of being a witch. She runs away. She finds refuge, what she thinks is going to be refuge, at the pastor's home. She's found by an angry mob. The people in the house fail to, I guess, protect her, and just kind of like go along with it. And she is put to the question, meaning horribly tortured and forced to confess to things, and then burnt alive, as was a punishment for witches who admit to it after being tortured into doing so. And then that's like the first half hour. Like usually that stuff would happen either like later. That would be like a climax almost to the movie. But no, that's like kind of like that's actually all set up for the remainder of this movie, which again follows the Anne, the wife of the pastor, who kind of like his helped with the process of burning this woman alive, because I don't know, it's a weird thing watching movies like this. I've talked about this before, my like this weirdness about watching movies involving witches, and this movie walks the fine line of like there's no real witch per se, and like anything that sort of happens that might be like a coincidence after the fact is people kind of allowing those things to happen to themselves, or complete coincidence, rather than like the devil is a real force, in which case, well, then witches do exist and maybe we should do something about them. This movie handles it in like, no, this is the horrors of like the witch hunt and like the absurdity of like violently making people confess, because of course they're going to confess regardless of whatever faith they have in Jesus Christ. They're, like if you hurt someone well enough, they will say anything for you to stop hurting them. So this movie, it takes place in a more of like a conventional reality. Like it's like, no, witches aren't real. It's not like a horror movie, like say like something like The Witch, where it's like, oh, witches are real and should be stopped. Anyways, I'm rambling on here.
Yeah, you did. You were.
I were.
You were.
So yeah, I mentioned the thing that this movie was made in 1943, or at least in 1942, and released in 43, during World War II. And there's like kind of like this obvious kind of relationship in my mind when I think about like people who are like being pursued by an angry mob, or perhaps a government force, and people hiding in someone else's house and then being found out. Kind of Anne Diary. And Frank's Diary.
Frank, you mean?
Yeah. I want to say
Jesus,
Anna Green Gables.
Come on.
So like there's like that part of the movie, which is like for a movie coming out during the war, kind of touching on that. It's like how, like, I'm not sure how aware people were of this process. I mean, they were, even though this movie is being made in another country, but it's also war-torn Europe. So it's actually pretty impressive that this movie is getting made during that period of time. You know, you just think that this sort of production would be not on anyone's table of things. Hey, let's make this movie about witch hunts. There's a fantastic line in this movie that I think reflects my view of things in terms of like religion and stuff like that. Is I don't fear heaven or hell. I do not want to die. It's like, yep, pretty much. That's like the thing that's like, I'm not afraid of dying because I'm going to go to heaven or hell, or not go to heaven and I'm going to go to hell. It's like, I don't want to stop living. That's pretty well it for me. And that's why sometimes when decisions are being made by fundamentalist types, when they're like, well, they have nothing to lose because they believe that this isn't the end of things. Contrary to all evidence. So I was like, yep, that's a pretty real thing. And like your human body is kind of all you've got going in this world. So I thought that line was, it explains why it's like, yeah, you can just resign yourself to dying and then it's going to work out okay. It's like, well, I don't think that's the case. And so it adds to like the messed upness of the whole situation.
Hey, Jarrett, all I got to say to you is absence of evidence. You know what I'm saying, dog?
Well, whatever you said there, Skype blinked out completely. No. It totally did. It's hilarious.
Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Did you get it that time?
No.
Did it come out loud and clear?
Skype God did not like what you were getting at there. So, yeah, there's nothing like the use of singing children to go along with the screams of a woman burning alive.
It was a good song too.
Yeah. Question for you, RJ. What's worse, the slow burn at the stake or going face first into the fire?
This was a new one for me. I think when they typically show these things, it is that slow burn
Yeah.
where you're up on the stake and then they light it
Joan
from
of
the
Arc
bottom.
style. Yeah.
Joan of Arc style. This one, I think I audibly said out loud. I was by myself watching, and I was just like, "Oh shit," because they just pull this woman up on like a cross and then drop her face first on the fire. I was like, "Oh shit, this is some serious stuff here, man." I think the slow one is worse because maybe if you got dropped head first on it, maybe at least you'd be like dazed a little bit, and then you'd be so burnt that you would just die. But when it comes from the feet up, I feel like you would feel at least up to your knees before you pass out.
So my counter argument is that I think the burning at the stake is you'll probably die from smoke inhalation. It sucks no matter.
Depends on how well they prepared that fire.
It sucks no matter what, but there's a good chance that you will die from smoke and you'll just be dead. Right. Whereas I think if you take that header, like your body is just alive the whole time as you burn. Like it's off. Like burning alive is like one of the worst ways to go away, from my understanding. So yeah.
You wanna try?
No, nah, I'm good.
That can be a Patreon goal for us.
And then, so I'll just leave my last two comments here, and then I'll pass it over to you. The world of this film is really dark, and this movie really presents some uncomfortable morality. As like what I just described is like the first half hour, and then like the remainder of the movie deals with. As mentioned in the synopsis, the relationship that happens between Anne, her husband, and the Epsilon's son, who's come back in, and he's moving in on his stepmom, like something out of a porn movie. And it kind of plays out this way, and she becomes more and more a bad person. And it's kind of like, is this because of a sexual awakening? Is this because sexuality is what can make people go bad? And in this world, it's kind of like, or is this like the witch's influence? This like liberation and freedom, is like liberation going to lead to women becoming bad? It's just like kind of like, that's odd, but of the time and of this worldview. Now, is this like a bigger lesson we take out of this movie, or is this just like specific to this particular story? So I don't know. I think someone could think of this movie as misogynistic potentially, depending on what you look at. I don't know. But I don't know if we'll talk.
You said it.
We'll see. I'm going to throw it to you, RJ, and we'll see what you think about this movie on the whole. Hey.
Yeah.
Go for it. What do you think about this?
You know what you did just now, Jarrett? You talked for about a solid 10 minutes. I don't think you ever said if you like this movie or not.
I don't know if it's a movie that you talk
Warrants
about
liking?
But it's a movie that you talk about like that.
Do you want me to talk about it first, and then you can say whether or not you like it?
Sure.
Okay, so here's the thing with this movie, Jarrett.
Yeah.
I think this is very well made.
Mm-hmm.
It's got some super cool stuff. I'm a good old Catholic boy, so I'm big time up with this Theodor Dreyer. Whenever I say that name, it reminds me of what's that? Not Albert Brooks. Mel Brooks. What's that joke where it's like Carl Dreyer? Are they talking about this guy?
Carl Reiner?
Carl Reiner. Oh, he's probably as old as Carl Dreyer, right?
Well, he's still...
Isn't Carl Reiner still alive?
Yeah.
Unlike, what's his name? Spartacus. Kirk Douglas.
Also alive.
Unlike him.
Mel Brooks. Still
and Mel
alive.
Brooks. Yeah, so anyways, I think about that a lot when I hear this guy's name.
Mm-hmm.
What was I talking about? This movie has very good sets. It looks real good, I think, for the most part. There's some striking scenes here and there. I love the Catholic themes, or not even the Christian themes and the Christian imagery and lots of stuff. And I like the themes that he throws in with this stuff. Like there isn't a lot of it, but there's a couple shots of just like men around tables, and they're all priests or like deacons or something like that, and they're all wearing the collars, and it's just a pile of them around a table. And especially in the torture scene where it's like the lady and it's like the oldest woman you can imagine, and she's like naked and embarrassed, and you're just like, holy shit, this is rough stuff. And then it just pans over to like a table of like 12 guys
Oh yeah.
in their priestly clothes just standing around there. So like I feel like this Carl Dreyer guy,
no,
I feel like he was, I don't know, I never looked into it, so someone might be mad listening to this. I feel like he was a Christian, but he was like, hey, check out this dark shit too. It's like, holy fuck.
From what I've seen mentioned in passing, and like I'm kind of two minds about this. I'm kind of just like going into these movies because we're going to be watching a documentary on him next week because that's the fourth movie in this collection. So I'm kind of like watching these movies and just trying to like feel out what the movies are about rather than like his view. I sometimes I decide to like go deep into it, and other times I'm like, I'm curious just to watch these movies as they are, because the way we're like with Joan of Arc and with this, like there is like, again, like the patriarchal sort of stuff like that, and like this sort of view of like men, the world of men is kind of like shitty and horrible, but at the same time there's like these views of women which I guess are like kind of weird, and it's hard to reconcile, but I mean it's a different era too, and it's like someone that's trying to work through this stuff. In a couple months we'll be talking about Haxon, which is going to be awesome because that movie's, I think, pretty cool. Anyway, you were saying
what was I saying?
Well, yeah, I guess Dreyer didn't apparently he didn't identify as a Christian, apparently,
but
but
he might not have identified it, but he was influenced, or even maybe like, not even if his family was brought up that way, but you know, his neighbor's family or something like that. So anyways, I love all that stuff in these old movies. I think it's super cool. Not in like a pushy way. It's like, oh yeah, look at these Christian things, man. I just think it looks cool. It's like, yeah, that's awesome stuff.
I think part of that though too is like nowadays, like you're not going to see like I don't think you're going to see a really well made movie about those themes that. Like they're not going to happen. The movies that get made, like the Christian movies that get made, they're like,
God is not dead.
They're bad. Like they're just like schmaltzy, sentimental, poorly made, not intelligent like movies. Like that's like no one wants to watch them. And I mean, this movie is like a serious drama that deals with these things. When if that's like Christianity was like, I mean, obviously Christianity is still like a pretty important factor in day-to-day life for many people. But like its prominence and like appearance in things is like kind of left out. Like there is like a real strain of like liberal humanism that exists in a lot of filmmaking, and it's like kind of like interesting to watch a movie at this point in time that like is fully engaged in it in a way that is like unsentimental.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel you, dude. I know what you mean. Yeah, it's the movies nowadays are little goofy, and they all star that guy who was Hercules, you know, the one, Kevin Sorbo. They all star that guy, but whatever. My point was, I think this is a well-made movie. It looks really cool. I liked it for the most part, but I really enjoyed the first half an hour where it's like the persecution stuff, and it's like, yeah, this is very Passion of Joan of Arc. It's very much the same kind of thing. And I know it sets up like the drama for the back end, like the other 2/3 of this movie. But I feel like once they like toss that old lady on the fire, and then it goes into this like family drama about like, it's like forbidden love, but also like guilt and grievance and like all these other things. I was like, I don't care about this as much, because you see like the old guy's young wife hitting it up with the son, and it was like, okay, I get it. But then it's like the old lady, it's like that girl's a floozy, and you're like, yeah, I get that too. And then I feel like they use that stuff to try to build up this thing where that lady's like, I'm gonna curse your family, and then it's like shitty stuff starts to happen to them, but not in like a supernatural way. It's just like, oh yeah, you married like a lady who's like 40 years younger than you, and then you feel bad because and then she realizes it, and then you start to feel bad because you're like, oh, I send all these people off to their death, but they're all living these like horrible lives, and it's like, what are we even doing here? Because like that's his big epiphany is like everyone tells me their sins when they die, and it's like, holy shit, people are bad. So it's like what is religion? I think like the underlying thing there is just like what even is Christianity or religion in general, or it's like why can people just live these horrible lives and then just be like, oh, whatever, I felt bad about it. And he's like, all right, I guess you're absolved. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what else to do. So, and then there's like grieving and there's like guilt about letting that old lady die and be tortured. But I feel like the back end or the back 2/3 of this movie, I think it's like it feels like two different movies to me. Like I
Right.
know why they do that stuff to set up the dynamic with all of these people, but I don't know. I didn't I didn't like it a whole pot. Like I didn't dislike this movie at all. Like I enjoyed this movie. It was just I was like I don't like this back 2/3 as much as I liked the build up to it. I was like
Yeah.
I kind of like
Well,
that first
yeah.
stuff with all these witch trials things, but I guess that's also why I liked Joan of Arc so much.
Right.
I
Well,
don't know.
because yeah, like I said, like that was like my comment about this movie is like very front loaded because it feels like the
Yeah.
whole like the conventional like the whole point of my interests are like in the like the witch hunt stuff. Oh, that's interesting in this like really realistic way, like a realistic kind of worldview. And they do that, and then the movie wraps that part up, and then you get also like the real tension of like how like, oh, is there anyone else you would like to denounce? And like that element of like
Hmm.
the witch hunt is also like so nightmarish to me because it's this idea that like all it takes is one person, one witch woman that's been accused to like say something about someone she wants to get revenge on, and then that's all the evidence you need because then they start,
Hmm.
I've heard some bad things about you, and it's like this whole like messed up like I don't know if you're familiar with your Foucault, but like just like the systems of like how society controls itself and like monitors
Hmm.
itself, and this idea that
Hmm.
like all like it just that's like the one thing that's like about like the witch hunt stuff like in the your 16th century is the like, oh, if you act out of sorts or act a little weird or a little too sexy, you may too be a witch. It's like, oh, you turned down my approach on you, lady. I'm gonna have to
Hmm.
maybe say some words to the local fucking mouth in town, and they'll just start saying how you're a witch. They saw you under the
Hmm.
gallows gathering some magic mushrooms, and they maybe even saw you kiss the devil's behind in the woods. And
Ooh, shit.
so it's just like, oh, like that stuff is the fact that, oh, this isn't like fiction. This is like reality. This is a reality for people. And it's like, I actually had a flashback to all movies while watching this to Braveheart.
Oh,
At the
cool.
at the very beginning of Braveheart, like when William Wallace's parents get like fucking just murdered by the British. Or no, sorry, it's not Braveheart. I'm wrong. You know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of The Messenger in Joan of
With
Arc.
that
The hovel.
Mila
Yeah. No, or
Ju-
the other one. Serene.
the with
Or
that
no, sorry,
Canadian girl.
sorry, yeah, no, it was The Messenger. Yes.
Yeah, with that like young blonde
Yeah,
girl that
it's
who's maybe
which is a
Canadian.
very which is a Braveheart knockoff ish movie because they were trying everyone's trying to make
Yeah.
their medieval epic, and it's just like
Hmm.
a bunch of like British men break into like an old hut because there's nothing to stop them. There's no police. There's no like security system. They just can be like, oh,
Hmm.
I'm gonna eat. I'm gonna fucking rape and eat and shit, and that's all my life
Jesus.
is. Her. And there's like the opening shot of like with the woman who's going to be accused as being a witch in her like hovel, and it's like this massive like way too big of like furnished like hovel that she's in because
Hmm.
production design wasn't quite as on the nose as it is now or like as well thought out. And so it's just like looking at this, I'm like, oh yeah, someone could just like come through the village one day in the middle of the night and just come into your door, and you're just like, oh yeah, there's no electricity, there's no power, you're just like on your own in this world. And of course, people believed in demons because you can't see anything, and so you're just left to your own imagination about thinking about things that are going to come get you because humanity's so horrible.
Yeah, but that's pretty true though. People do suck,
They do suck, and like when I watch movies
and
like this,
I don't know if you know this, but people will get you.
yeah, and it still happens, and like we're like the probably in the best position we've ever been for that not to happen, but here we are. But yeah, no, I
Yeah,
agree. So anyway, I agree that this
what are we
like
talking about here?
that the the second hour of this movie after that,
Yeah.
the opening half hour.
I think we're on the same page for this bad boy.
Yeah. And then
Dayarath.
yeah, don't be a woman.
Don't be a woman. It'll bring you nothing but problems. So just be like me. Be a white male in southern Alberta, and you'll be okay.
Yep.
You'll be okay.
You can go pools and poo all day.
Anyone who listens to only the Criterion portion won't know what you're talking about.
Nope.
But that's kind of funny.
That's incentive to listen to the whole episode.
Yeah, go to those
SoundCloud.
full episodes, baby. Ooh, girl. Yeah, and you can hear Jarrett sneeze and cough in those portions of the episodes as well.
That's right.
God.
It's very
We just
professional.
dropped 4-star ratings, I think, because of that.
Next up,
Yeah.
Ordet from 1955.
Mm-hmm.
So Ordet here, the tagline for the film, a legend for today. And the synopsis, the three sons of devout Danish farmer Morten have widely disparate religious beliefs. Youngest son, Anders, shares his father's religion, but eldest son, Michael, has lost his faith, while middle son, Johan, has become delusional and proclaims he is Jesus Christ himself. When Michael's wife, Inger, goes into a difficult childbirth, everyone's beliefs are put to the test. That synopsis misses like a big part of the movie. So anyway, so Ordet is the other movie in the collection that I've seen before. Next week, I've never seen Gertrude, and I've never seen that documentary on Dreyer. So those will be fresh views to me. But I've seen this Ordet. Watching Ordet, though, I was like, I recognize this movie, but I don't remember why I remember really liking this movie. And I was like waiting for like something to come along to be like, why do I like in my mind regard this movie so highly? And then it does come and click into place, because while this movie, I don't think it would be a stretch to say this movie is kind of languidly paced, like a bit slow. It's just a little over 2 hours long. So the element of the movie that like is really missing here from the synopsis is the why things kind of get to the point they are at. So what happens is, so we have this Morten, this old man, sitting around in his farmhouse. Everybody kind of like is kind of around at his leisure. Everyone lives at home still with this guy, because it's like, I guess this is set in 1925, but it kind of feels like it could be set at like any point in time. There's like, there's no phones, there's no cars. It's just kind of like, oh, this is just life probably for the last like 200 years in old Denmark. So Morten has this younger son who wants to get married to Anne, the girl who lives in town, but they don't share the same Christian faith. They're all Christians. Now, this is all just splitting hairs to me, but
you want me to fill in those gaps for you, baby?
Yeah, you can get to that here. But anyway, so there's kind of I want to get married to this girl, but our fathers have different views on religion, so it's just not going to happen. And you get these like, I don't know, you get these really charming scenes. I really liked where Michael's wife Inger is like kind of like sweet talking the old man, buttering him up, getting his pipe all filled, and making biscuits and like everything the way he likes. And he kind of like by the end of it, he's like, oh, okay, what do you want? And then he finds out, and he's like, oh, like no, he's not getting married to her. It's like sheep should get married to the same types of sheep. But then of course when he finds out that the father of the daughter is like against it, he's like, whoa, why isn't my son good enough for your daughter here? And so you get these things. It's like, it's all very like, just, I mean, it's melodrama stuff. It's like all very basic, but it never feels that way. Like it doesn't feel like, it doesn't feel American, because it's not an American movie. It just, you have these like long scenes of characters just talking, but like you really like, because there's not much else going on like in the scenes, the way they're photographed, it's like very like play-like. You're like actually focusing in on what they're saying, and you're actually involved with the discussion. You kind of have an actual sense of like what everybody in the scene wants. So in that sense, it's like really well developed, I guess. But it's all like it's a slow burn of a movie. And then in the background you have old Johannes, this man wandering around with the Jesus beard and this high pitched voice. I talks like this, and he just is saying Jesus stuff. He takes off in the middle of the night, wandering around in these like beautiful grassy hills, and everyone's like there's all these scenes of them always going after him and finding him and stuff like that, and they're I guess beautifully shot. And then you get back to these rooms of just people kind of like conversing around dinner tables about like life and stuff like that. And like again, it's like it's all very watchable to me in a way that like I don't know. I think that based on these two movies, Dreyer is not as good a director as Bresson Ozu, if you're talking about the transcendental style. But I mean, he's like I think really committed to the ideas that these movies are exploring. And in this case, this idea of faith and belief in religion, which is stuff that I guess I find interesting from a distance. It's nothing that I'm engaged with in any meaningful way. But then, I mean, like, hey, I mean, you're really turning my crank, though, when you start talking about pieces of babies in a bucket.
4 separate pieces.
Yeah, four. Yeah, you had to get it out of there. And that's like when the movie kind of takes a decidedly dark turn and very like oh shit, yeah, life's horrible out here in rural communities in 1925. On the farm. But yeah, I mean, I watched this movie. I didn't take really any notes. Like I have like 3 sentences here. I mean, the movie really comes down to the ending, which like I think is like fucking like a horror movie. It's like weird and chilling and like whoa, and like I think it's so like I think without this ending, I don't know if there's much to write home about with this movie, but like the statement and like kind of eeriness of the ending, which I see some people like lose their mind on when we get to who hates this movie, like they just fucking think it's bullshit. But I'm like, no, this is where the movie's going. To me, like, we'll see what you have to say. Maybe you're on the flip side of me, but yeah, like we'll get into it, I guess. RJ, what did you think of Ordet?
Ordet. What does Ordet mean?
Ordet.
What does that mean? Okay, you look it up. All right, so like you, I had actually very little notes for this movie, which is the same as Day of Wrath. I didn't have a whole lot of notes for that movie either. I kind of just watched them, wrote down fun things that I thought were funny.
The Ordet means the word, and was originally released in English as The Word.
Okay, so that makes sense. So yeah, I didn't have a lot of notes either for these. I just wrote down stuff I thought was funny or things that stuck out to me. By the way, I forgot to mention Day of Wrath. There was lots of talk about looking into people's eyes as they burnt people alive. And again, I thought about Martyrs. Martyrs is everywhere. Since I've seen that movie, it's everywhere, and especially in these Christian films. Anyways, Ordet, the word. So I threw this bad boy on, and I think I related to this one a little bit more than the last one. Not necessarily because it's like farm stuff, because you don't really see any farm stuff. You just hear them talk about like
the pigs.
This is our farm. Yeah, it's like we got pigs, they got chickens. Isn't life crazy? So I don't think it was because of like farm stuff. I don't know what it was. I guess it's just the family dynamic. It seemed like they had like stuff going on, but they all were still like a family. They're like, oh, he's like, oh, hey, Pa, I'm going to go propose to this girl. And it's like, you better not. And he like slaps his knee. Like not as goofy as that, but I was like, I like this. So I was like, this is fun. This is light. This light movie.
Breezy.
Breezy. I liked Ordet more than Day of Wrath, I think. And it's like we were talking about, where I think the front part of Day of Wrath is good. The back end is not as appealing to me. I think Ordet had a lot more stuff that I I wanted to see. Like I really liked this crazy dude walking around telling everyone that he was Jesus Christ, and he was just walking around like saying hymns and stuff like that. I was like, oh yeah, like because he's not never really on the forefront. He's just kind of always in the background. I was like, that's a really fun character to have. It reminded me of future Criterion Creep directors like that have quirky characters. Like your favorite Criterion director, Kevin Smith. He's known for his quirky characters.
Yeah.
So like I really like seeing that guy kind of walk around and do stuff like that. And then there were things about this movie that I thought were like the themes I thought were kind of in line with the last one, but it was more about morality of not just it wasn't as much about as morality of faith as it was about like what kind of faith is right, which I guess is still a morality of faith thing. It's like, is it right to have one or the other? Like, aren't all faiths equal in their own right? I think is like something that he tries to go after a lot. And there was one line I liked in this movie quite a bit where they're like talking to each other where like the baby is like dead and someone was like, well, you and your lukewarm faith. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, that dude's like cutting at the fucking heart with this one. He's like, well, maybe if you were a better Christian, your kids wouldn't have all died. And I was just like, holy shit, this movie's fucking intense. I think this movie would be really ripe for a remake, starring Brian Cox as the old farmer, because that guy looks just like Brian Cox. Starring Jack McBrayer as the son who wants the other girl's hand in marriage because he looks just like Jack McBrayer, and then Edward Norton as Jesus Christ, the character walking around with the stick. They all look exactly like those fucking people, and I was just like, holy shit. I was like, this movie could be remade right now. I think it would be pretty good. What was I even talking about? Have I even talked about this movie at all, or have I just been rambling? I don't know.
You've been talking about how you relate to this movie in two ways.
In two ways? Did I say either of those two ways?
No. Just continue.
Okay. Let me rephrase. Relate. I liked this movie because I liked the down home country setting, and I liked that it was kind of like a bottle episode of TV kind of. It's like all taking place more or less. It's like all taking place in this one room. It's like the kitchen farmhouse, and everyone's kind of there, and you just see stuff in other rooms going on, and then they kind of come back, and it's these people dealing with this heavy thing. It's like, oh yeah, she's having a baby. It's like, oh shit, this baby's not gonna make it. We better hacksaw this baby out of this lady.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like, holy fuck, that's dark. And then it's like, oh yeah, the lady's right. Okay. And it's like, oh wait, that lady died. And you're just like, holy shit, what's going on in this movie?
Mm-hmm.
So there was one thing I thought was really funny when the grandpa comes in the room. It was either the grandpa or the father, and or even the doctor or something like that. Like the lady is like clearly dying, and someone goes, "Is that labor pains?" And it was like, well, no shit. Like this lady is like having some pain from labor. I thought that was really funny. I don't know, man. I find this one a little bit harder to talk about, even though I enjoyed it more, I guess. I don't think the ending like wowed me. Like I could see it wowing other people. It also didn't make me mad either. Mm-hmm. All I could think about was Stephen King's Pet Sematary, where it's just that quote. It's like, sometimes dead is better.
Right.
Sometimes dead is better. So that's all I could think about. And like it was building up to like the ending it had. I was like, I think they're gonna go for it. Mm-hmm. I was like, I was like, I don't know. This is an old movie. Maybe they're just gonna like pretend to get up for it because that would be edgy enough in its time. But I was like, I don't know. I think they're gonna go for it, and then they go for it, and I was like, nice. Well, but it didn't like blow my shorts out.
I don't know. I think I can't even think of movies that were like they just go that far. It's not like every like action movie does the same idea where it's like the power of love.
Yeah.
Tears waking people, blah blah, like Neo,
Yeah.
Trinity. Like it's like they did it all the time in those movies, and it's like it means nothing. It's not moving. It's not like anything because it's just like, oh, these are fantasy movies. So like Ordet sets up this entire movie. Its whole premise is like this world that's like kind of like in Day of Wrath. It's like it's our world.
Hmm.
It's conventional reality, and there's no like the director doesn't have any more knowledge about things than we do. He's not just like, well, if only people really understood that Saruman has the real power in this universe, and then this is actually pretty expected if you look back in the Christopher. Like, there's like no like,
Did you say Saruman
so, yeah, like it's
from
like
Lord of the Rings?
correct. So like, I mean, there's no like
Okay.
fantastic element where it's like there's like, oh, there's like a
Sure.
trump card where there's actually a precedent in the historical lore of this world. It's like in this, it's like, no, this is like our world, and we have no certainty about anything, and other than like life is pretty conventional, and you die, and that's it. That's the end of the story, unless like you fall asleep and you're mistaken for dead, and then you wake back up, and then they're like,
Hmm.
oh, why am I in an ambulance? That sort of like that. Those things do happen, but there's no like direct thing where it's like, oh, this guy is going to use the power of God and the faith of a young child to just bring a woman back to life in front of a bunch of people, and we get to watch it too as the audience, and it's like it's ballsy. It's like kind of like most movies don't do that. Like most movies like beat you down with the fact that that's not going to ever happen. And in this movie, it's like not like this isn't like Lazarus or anything like that, where it's like, oh yeah, this is like what happens in the Bible, where it's like there's a disconnect to it, and it's supposed to like it's like these are supposed to actually be allegories or kind of like not a historical depiction of things. So you can do those like depict it that way, and it kind of like doesn't feel magical there either. Though the one I was thinking about Scorsese's Last Temptation of Christ, because I always have loved the fact that when he shows Lazarus, Lazarus is like rotting and horrible, and the way he would be after several days. And here we don't get to that point exactly with the mom with old
I feel like
Inger.
they do though
A
eventually.
little like they kind of like
I
show her
feel
because
like they
like
would get there.
they would get there's like is that the next step is like
Yeah.
oh she like, how rough she's
Well,
going to
they
look
cut
like.
a baby out of a person. I'm pretty sure they're gonna get to that rotting corpse stage.
Yeah. So there's like that kind of thing where they're showing this like, and it's like it kind of links back to like the horror of martyrs, where it's like this
Hmm.
idea of like, yeah, like these like great lengths are taken to like achieve some sort of like actual depiction of like the reality of religion in a way that's like it shouldn't be a warm fuzzy thing. It should be kind of
Hmm.
like terrifying. And that's like when one of my like dream projects is always to be like kind of make like a horror anthology of like Bible stuff, because it's like that stuff's like to me is like this isn't wonderful Sunday school crap. Like this stuff's like really like
Hey
off-putting.
man, Old Testament was dark as fuck.
Even New Testament stuff, there's some like elements to that where you're like, man, like the world's horrible, and if you think about like like if you applied that stuff to now, I guess like Nick Cave wrote a novel that kind of like is set in a universe where it's like the Old Testament's real, like where
Nice.
it's like, oh, this is like the world governed by it, and like the idea that angels still kind of come down and do things. It's like, oh, this is a world where that could happen, but it wouldn't make any sense. Like it would be just kind of more,
Sounds cool.
yeah, I know, yeah. I can't remember the name of the book off the top of my head. It's got a
I'm gonna
striking
look it up.
title. Yeah, look it up. But so yeah, for me, like this ending, like I think the ending's so good because there's like really good filmmaking going on. Like actually, there's a couple other bits too I'll mention. Or like the music, there's like the use of music in this. Like I think about one of the last few movies we watched where the music really bugged me was Sullivan's Travels, where like it's got that
Mm-hmm.
real goofball music. Where you're like, man, this is like not a good aesthetic choice. They should have gone in a different direction than this goofball music telling you that this is comedy. And this movie like has very minimal music other than like a couple of things where it's like, oh, we want to make you moved here. But like during the whole like funeral sequence, there's like no music. There's no like other than people's voices chatting. The thing where time freezes, like where the clock stops and it's just
Mm-hmm.
and it kicks back in after a period of time. Just like all those little things to kind of like take you away to this sort of like cinematic space of like, will they or won't they do this? And like, I mean, rewatching the movie, like I knew like because like that was like the point where like after like the I guess what do you want to call it, the miscarriage, the botched childbirth. That's when the movie that's where the movie makes me go, oh, that's where this movie's going again, because I kind of forgot about it. It's like, why is this movie like stuck in my head? And I'm like, right, the end of this movie, which is like, I don't know, it doesn't have a lot of precedence to me that I'm aware of where a movie goes like, oh, hey, a woman literally comes back to life, and they depict it in this movie. And I mean, that's the only way you could do it, because you can't do it in real life. We've never seen, like, I don't know.
What do you mean you can't?
You can't do it in real life, RJ. You cannot just like decide, hey, if I'm going to really believe that God is going to bring this person back to life, they're going to come back. And that movie kind of suggests, well, because no one really actually believes in God enough for that to happen. Because if you did, it would happen. And it's kind of like,
maybe you can't.
Well, it's a kind of a fascinating thing where it's like, is that the only reason why people don't come back more often? Is because like no one really believes enough, and it's only through the power of a child and a guy who's like may or may not actually be Jesus, or like he's really figured it out, and it's like going to cause this rebirth of Christianity in the land that's needed in these trying times.
I think the thing to keep in mind is that you're a heathen and you don't fully embody the body of Christ, and you don't really understand. And maybe if you were a little bit better, you would know what's going on here. But you're a bad dude.
Yeah. I am glad though that Michael here is agnostic enough to like, oh, hey, I just literally saw my wife come back to life. Yeah, I'm going to believe. I'm back. I'm back in the.
You got me back, baby.
Yeah, our baby is with God. He's alive in heaven. It's all good. Yeah. He's not dead anymore. It's all good. But it's just like, oh man, the ramifications of this. Like, there's like, I mean, again, like this comes back to a Day of Wrath. Like, there's the ramifications of this worldview in reality, and that's like why it's kind of like, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of horrifying rather than like, oh, see, finally like good Christian movies come along that's like really showed that like everything's going to be great. And it's like, well, this is a movie that like, I guess like has its grounding in like a Christian worldview, but presents it in reality, and like the fact that like how we view the world rubbing up against this sort of like spiritualism kind of presents, it's like, this is a really uncomfortable morality, which is what I was kind of mentioning with Day of Wrath. But in that movie, there's like kind of like more of like what's going on with this woman, and like, well, it's the fact that she's become sexualized, and like it makes her want to kill her husband now because she wants to be liberated from this, and she doesn't want to just get a divorce, because that's not going to happen in that time and place. The only way you're going to get divorced is if somebody's dead.
Sexual liberation. Yeah. Somehow our podcast always seems to come back to that.
Everything comes back to that.
Every episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you, dog.
No.
No, I don't know. It's like I said, I find it kind of hard to talk about Ordet. I think I enjoyed it more.
Yeah.
But I don't think I really said why. I kind of talked for a while, but I don't know. I think the ending is cool. I think the old guy farmer is really cool. I don't know. I think it's just it's an entertaining movie. Like, it's a good watch. I feel like you can watch it front to back and be like, nice, I'm into this. Nice. Maybe not. I think there's probably some people who really hate this thing, but
speaking of which,
I wonder if they have ulterior motives on why they don't like it.
Okay, well, here we go. Who hates these movies? Mm-hmm. First up is Day of Wrath. The lowest ratings, like there's like a half star, and it's like, who cares about that? 2 stars from Jake here, de Eisenstadt, something like that.
Jake de Encinta.
Yeah. Go ahead and call me a Philistine, but I'm presently at 0 for 5 into Dreyer's filmography. I know I'm supposed to love him in order to be able to call myself a true cinephile. You're not. It doesn't. Who cares? No. But there's just something about his Scandinavian Puritanism that rubs me the wrong way. To be fair, I can see a common stylistic thread that runs from him through Bergman, Tar, and to a lesser extent Tarkovsky, all of whom count as great auteurs who I've never really responded to, so make of that what you will. At least I saw this on a great-looking 35mm print, so if nothing else, I sort of have a newfound appreciation for some of Dreyer's editing and especially blocking, which eluded me in his previous work. However, I doubt that this is actually any better or worse than Ordet or Gertrude, but I can say that I enjoyed it a little bit more for what that's worth. I mean, at least now I can sort of see why a bunch of my favorite filmmakers, Hal Hartley and Eugene Green, not the least of whom, swear by him. Unfortunately, whatever newfound appreciation I have gained for Dreyer's distinctive style is marred by my complete disengagement from this film's subject matter. Dreyer's austere mise-en-scène is challenging enough, but the severe, ponderously puritanical themes don't help at all. On the surface, I guess this is sort of the director's most conventional narrative that I've seen, which might be part of why I didn't hate it as much as some of his other films, but it's still really not fun at all. No humor, no liveliness to speak of. I get that's part of the point, but the dourness gets stultifying very quickly. At times, the plot could almost pass for a romantic melodrama, but one drained of life and injected with alienating Protestant morality, especially when it seems like Dreyer actually agrees with the most puritanical characters. To be fair, I can see how someone could say pretty much the same thing about Bresson, except I don't think any French filmmaker is as utterly incapable of joy as this crabby Dane. To his credit, as I noted above, Dreyer's influence on cinema is obvious. The thing is, he seems to have most directly influenced other filmmakers I have similar problems with, namely Bergman. Humorless chamber dramas are not my thing. I confess, I was tempted to laugh a few times watching this, although I'm pretty sure the humor wasn't intentional. The entire notion of contemplative cinema, in particular, owes much to Dreyer's wet fuse, pacing, and long, unbroken takes. The only problem is, I guess I don't really like contemplative cinema that much. Not to be confused with films that are actually contemplative as of having ideas, which I think describes all the films I like.
Are you done?
I'm done.
This Jake fellow has their ratings bar. It's not a bell curve. It is a straight line. They have about 300 ratings for every single star rating you can have. There's 300 for 5 stars. There's 299 for 4.5. There's 300 for 4 stars, all the way down to half stars where there's 311. This person, Jarrett, gave Vertigo 1 star. This person, Jarrett, gave Inherent Vice 5 stars. This person, Jarrett, gave My Man Godfrey 5 stars. This person, this is not a good person.
He's a bad guy, a bad dude.
Just a pretentious dude, it seems like. But
want to hear something funny? So I got a notification on Letterboxd of my review for Star Trek: The Motion Picture was apparently cited on a podcast. And the person, and the people doing the podcast actually left a comment saying, "Hey, your review was used that way." And I went, "Oh, I won't be doing that with people."
So, well, whatever.
So I'm always like I read that review and I completely stand by it. Like maybe they'll give me the who hates treatment, and they'll judge my favorite films.
Whatever. If they're doing it, they copied us.
If anyone's interested, they can find my review and follow that link because I'm not doing it. Roland St. Laurent, though, 2 stars, too, for Day of Wrath. Another molasses-paced effort by Carl Dreyer. The pace didn't bother me as much as this time around, probably because at this point I expect his films to move slow as shit. But Christ, did that ending completely sour the film for me. I was really enjoying it. Well, maybe? No, yeah. I was really enjoying it because there's nothing better than seeing a hypocritical pastor getting cuckolded by his own son. But the final scene, while inevitable, sucked all the pleasure out of the previous hour. A woman's youth is stolen by a powerful old geezer. She finally gains some control over it, and then bam, she gets punished at the end. I guess I can now add Dreyer to the list of genius filmmakers that I just don't like, alongside Godard and Antonioni.
This Roland dude?
Yo.
He likes some pretty hot movies, like Babe, Pig in the City, In the Mouth of Madness, Extro, my Alien movie, baby, The Devils, Possession, some pretty good shit.
Well, I thought there for a second you were going to say The Sandlot, which reminded me there's apparently a Sandlot prequel film coming.
I thought that already came out and people rejected it.
Oh, well.
Like, I'm gonna reject you in time.
Yeah. So I don't know. People, right?
People, am I
Hey,
right?
Ordet though, half a star
Ooh,
from Peter Putzel. It isn't
excuse me?
very often I watch a movie that makes me want to follow it up with Schindler's List as a mood lightener, but Ordet is one of those films. It is depressing, depressingly slow, and then a little more depressing. I may have watched part of this film with a plastic bag duct taped around my head. Then a foolish ending you joke about, but don't really believe will come. Well, maybe you believe it just a little bit comes. And broken household items follow. A dog may be kicked. Clothing may be torn in rage. I'm torn between recommending it for the sheer stupidity of it and the insane ending, or warning all of humankind to stay away. It's a terrible film either way. Viewer beware.
Is that all this fucking guy has to say?
Yeah. Hey, RJ,
This
have you
fucking guy.
ever felt like kicking a dog because of a movie?
No, because I'm not a piece of shit.
And
Like this loser.
what's this guy like?
Lawrence of Arabia, Amadeus, Howard Hawks's The Thing, Black Narcissus. I don't think any of these movies are really his favorite movies.
Yeah.
He also has Return of the Jedi, Last Mohicans, The Big Short. Oh fuck, nobody gives a shit about The Big Short. Hell or High Water. Good Christ,
Half a
this
star.
guy's all over the map.
But from Bob P. Why? Why did I watch this? For whatever reason, I find almost all of Dreyer's films infuriating, chock full of insufferable characters with few or no redeeming characteristics. This is one of those movies. And the end? Fuck that noise. Go watch The Passion of Joan of Arc instead. That is a great movie.
This person seems pretty hot on themselves.
Yeah.
They gave Seventh Seal 5 stars. They gave Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade 5 stars.
Huh.
You know what else they gave 5 stars, Jarrett?
What?
Boyhood. And Inside Out. The most overrated piece of shit Pixar movie ever made. You heard it here first.
Mm-hmm.
That movie sucks. And this guy's opinion sucks too. He's really into Mel Brooks's comedies as well, which I know you're not a fan of.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. These people all seem pretentious.
Yeah. They don't got time for Jesus.
You better make time, or else he's gonna make time for you, pal.
That sounds like a song right there. A warning country
I could be
song.
a Christian country rock star.
Damn right. Well, I don't know. I guess like our conclusions here are kind of like they're good movies. Uncertain how much we feel about them. Which like I prefer that in some ways to be like kind of like I don't know how I feel about these. I don't know like oh yeah dude you gotta watch it. You gotta watch Ordet, man. Like that's because that's how we watch movies now. Like that's like society, man. It's all about like, well, you will never see the ending coming, and it's just like kind of like, no, we don't. Why are we watching movies like this? Why? What happens in the post-credit sequence?
Yeah. Where is the post-credit, the after-credit scene for this?
Nowhere to be found. Well, there we go. After the break, RJ is going to be found in 4 pieces in a bucket.
It's not any different from any other day